Hi, today we're talking about how to fix your anxiety symptoms with this hack. That's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about hacking the brain. Um, I really think this is a gimmicky title. I'm being creative and exploring, but I do like hack because it's the definition is a usually simple and clever tip or technique for accomplishing some familiar task more easily and efficiently. And I am all about that. I want this for everyone with who has symptoms of anxiety and depression and traumatic stress. And so, because when you get this right, when you hack the brain, you work with the brain in this way, symptoms resolve very beautifully. I'm Rachel McLeod. I am a mental health therapist, a coach, and a therapist mentor, and I specialize in helping people do the brain work for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. And so the brain has a really beautiful process for this that can get stuck. Today, I'm going to talk about how to get that unstuck. Um, and to get this moving forward, this brain process moving and completing its work. A lot of the symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress we experience are because the brain cannot complete its process. And so it's trying, right? You know, it's gearing up and things are looping and thoughts are looping. And it's not completing, it's not finishing, it's making things worse. If we do not get this brain process unstuck, it will loop for a lifetime. And then your brain has to do a lot of tricks to make sure that you don't, that one malfunction doesn't ruin things for you. And so you'll watch yourself do to compensate for this process not functioning. So we're not making direct pathways, we're actually having to go around. And then we have to go around and around and around, and it gets bigger. And that's how anxiety can get worse. That's how it can take up more of our life. And so, really, we want to work through this in a very different way because our brain really uses. I have a hair on my lip. I can't live like that. The brains use anxiety what causes anxiety to for brain food, for growth, for building new processes, new skill sets, new ways of understanding the world, wisdom, insight, epiphanies. What's happening is important, but if it doesn't complete, we get anxiety. If it does complete, we get all this growth, all this wellness. It's how our brains create our health and wellness. We want that running well. So I'm going to talk about this hack. And in order to do that, I'm going to give you a really quick understanding of brain function. That is the best I've heard. I'm not going to nerd out at the level that where I got this from Dan Siegel. He does interpersonal neurobiology. And so that's not the, it's like they show you graphs and pictures and fMRIs and brain stuff, kind of like the body keeps the score. Anyway, so they talk brain function and how it all works together. So I watch those trainings and they say all the parts of the brain and it goes over my head, but I get the message and um, I can't with them. But I love hearing them because it's really clarifying because it does break things down to just brain function. It's transformed my practice and skyrocketed my success with clients because the brain's got to do this work, so we might as well get to know the brain. And even though I can't say any of the names of the parts of the brain, I'm familiar with what we're doing in there. So I'm going to tell it to you how I really like to explain this to clients. Um, so this is the model of the brain, right? If you've ever watched Dan Siegel, he'll talk about this model of the brain. It's brilliant. So I'm not going to replicate it, but I'm not going to reinvent something. Okay, so this is the brain stem in the body, right? This is this is the spinal cord in the body. And then this right here is the brain stem. This is the limbic system, the survival system. And this is the prefrontal cortex. Now, Dan Siegel will go into, in this last training, he talked about each of these parts as different lobes in the brain. It got really wild in there in that training. But what I will tell you in Rachel language is that this is a bunch of different factories in the brain. It's higher level reasoning. There's little spots here, little factories where the brain will put the information coming up from the body into thought words. It'll add values and morals to it. It will add a social perspective from a social lens, seeing things from other perspectives. That happens up here in this part of the brain. Problem solving, resources. I wonder if I talked to this person, or if I did that thing that worked the last time. That's up in this part of the brain. And so when something passes up here, it gets to go through all of this factory stuff, and then the brain will give it words. All these beautiful things are added to it, and it really produces beautiful growth, new ways of being in the world, insights, epiphanies. So many, it'll regulate the nervous system, right? And teach the whole body system to be regulated, and how we're actually going to act that's more informed in the world, more accurate, and more based on reality instead of fantasy, fears, irrationality. This is important. I'm gonna come back to that because it's really important. But what we have here is that the body's job is to send up all the information, right? So your feelings, the touching, right, sensation, the tactile sensation, the sound, it's all the reality stuff. What's happening in the world is coming through the body, the eyes, the ears, the skin, the bones, those sorts of things. What's going on inside of the world is also being reported from the body, and that lets this part of the brain understand what's happening, right? Now, this is our wonderful player. This is the star of the anxiety symptom resolution show. And however, this right here, the limbic system, is the gatekeeper, and it's reading all this information that's coming up the spine and the brainstem, and it's determining if we're safe in reality or if we're not safe. And so uh, it has its own judgments for this, but it's really listening to the pain neurons. So if what the body is sending up is painful, socially painful, physically painful, relationally painful, emotionally painful, all of that stuff will trigger this part of the brain, and it will start taking charge of everything. It kind of this He calls this flipping your lid, right? I think that's an excellent way of saying this, because we all know what it's like to flip your lid. And so you flip this up, and you're running under the jurisdiction of the limbic system, the survival system. And this part is designed to keep us alive. And it is entirely, all it cares about is keeping this body, the physical form, intact. It does not know how to thrive. It does not know how to make you have great relationships. It doesn't understand social nuances. It doesn't understand other perspectives. This part is when we are here, we're pretty narcissistic. We're not running from the top of the brain. We're not getting to do that stuff. This is why we don't want to parent when we're in this state. This is why we don't want to do much of our life governed by the survival system. We want to do most of our stuff here in a whole brain state. So, and okay, I'm not going to jump forward. I'm staying the course here. So, this is all really important. We want to do things in a whole brain state, but if pain is coming up, it flips, right? And so here we go with the hack, okay? And I'm going to tell you, I told this story today. Oh, I told this. I want to say something else. Okay. This is also where we get bottom up healing from. It's because the body is sending up information to the top of the brain to heal. And that's actually where trauma work is moving to. We're moving to a bottom up transformation and healing, because this is actually how the brain is designed to heal. And 80% of the information that was going on is coming from the body and the spinal cord and the brainstem, and 20% is coming from the top back down. In my experience, the hardest part is getting this stuff up here. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So, but this is not our boss. This is our boss, actually. Let's talk about it like this. It's not the boss of change and healing, but this is where we sit in the center of our command, right? Our command center, and we're thinking all the thoughts, and we're conscious awareness, and all these things are up here and our higher level reasoning. But really, they're only sending about 20% back down. And this is the easiest part of the communication loop. It's like if you're in an office and your boss tells you all the stuff, but it's so hard to get your boss to listen to all of your experiences. Or maybe you're in a different power dynamic. It's usually like that in boss employee relationships, right? The boss feels free to speak as much as they want, and then the employee is like, you're not that accurate, and but yes, that would work, but it wouldn't work because of this, and you don't understand this piece. And I'm trying to tell you, but you're not listening, and so we have that malfunction. We will see that in work situations. It's easier for the information to go one direction than the other. Okay, and that's how it is in our body too. And so one of the hacks is that we're going to go from the bottom up. We're going to help the body deliver the messages to the upper parts of the brain so that it's accurate. Okay, that's really, really important, because the part of the brain is going to run regardless. And it's either going to run with all this accurate information about reality, or guess what? If it doesn't get that information, it's going to just keep doing what brains do and keep making up stories, right? That aren't really accurate, but it's the best we can do. So just go with what we're telling you. You know, and the rest of the body's like, I don't want to go because that's not right. Let me tell you some things. And it's not doing that, because once we flip the lid here, the communication loop between the whole brain and the body is interrupted, right? So the body cannot deliver the information. And when we're here, the information coming up, the energy and the emotions coming up, gets used by the survival system to fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn. And that's our design. It's how humans have stayed alive for all this time. And so it's really hardwired into us. And so we need to take this into account when we are working with ourselves. So, but if we can influence this to be closed, then all of a sudden that information loop is running beautifully, and the body's telling the top parts of the brain all the important things. They're putting words to it, values, morals, goals, other perspectives. Beautiful solutions are coming out because they're on point and they're informed. And our life is transforming and well. Okay. Now, the problem here is, and this is where we're going to hack a lot as well. This is the main hack. This information that's coming up from the body, if it registers as pain, we're likely to do this, right? However, how humans are designed is if we can influence this part of the brain to stay regulated, or to allow not to flip the lid. If we can influence it not to flip the lid and interrupt the communication loop, while pain is moving, all of a sudden that pain is arriving to the top of the brain, or that material, that information is arriving to the top of the brain that can actually create change, healing, wellness. They love that stuff. They don't care about if it's pain or if it's not pain. So if we can sit right here with this limbic system and influence it, hey, chill, we're good. Let's just let the communication loop complete. Let's just let it finish what it's doing. No need to react. Let's just chill. And that's really what we want to do. Now, let me tell you this. This is really important for you to understand. This part of the brain is not a word center. It doesn't care what you say. It's not a logical center. It doesn't care about any logic or reasoning. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. It doesn't care. And so we cannot influence it to stay stuck by staying closed here, by saying, hey, we're safe. Just be chill out. Don't you see what would make you react like this, right? We're arguing and reasoning with that part of the brain. It's not designed like that. And so you're actually being very ineffective, and you're missing opportunities to create health and wellness. And so let me tell you a little bit about this part of the brain. Like I said earlier, its whole job is to keep the body alive. And so what it's really listening to is the body. That's it. So if you can use your body to send signals of safety, it will react very quickly and regulate. We call this regulating the nervous system by putting the lid back down, and calm. This happens in a calm state, or more relaxed state. So where was I? I was at, okay, so because this is responding to the body, so we can use the body to send signals of safety. So I teach 4 strategies. I have 4 that I use, and I'm going to tell you there's a ton more, and I'm going to show you why here in a second. But I teach 4 strategies, and these are very different ways of working with the brain. Because we are going to, our only job, my only job, is and to resolve symptoms and resolve disorders, create tons of emotional health and wellness that your brain can sustain for you and keep growing, because the brain has a process for this, because we're always outgrowing our needs. And so the brain will need to create more and more and more health and wellness for us. Um, to do that, um, I'm getting off on all these tangents. I think I might have to hook my brain up. This is a brain descrambler here. We play with this when we're kids, but really, if you scramble the brain up like that, it has to figure out what's on the right side and the left and do all that stuff. So, okay, I'm gonna get back here. Okay, yeah. So there's four. I teach four strategies for this, and they are very different. And they're emotional freedom techniques, thought field therapy, EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and energy medicine. Now, EFT, emotional freedom techniques, and thought field therapy are tapping interventions. So we're tapping on specific parts of the body. It's like emotional acupressure, but it has the body component involved. So every time we're tapping on a point, this part of the brain is getting messages. It's like, what's that? And it knows that those are safety signals. And so all of a sudden you do a round of tapping and you start noticing this happening. There's lots of cues and signs that this is happening. I teach these interventions for free. When people sign up for it's called Interventions for Inner World Transformation. I also offer them if people sign up for my newsletter. But and there's a video where I show you there's some objectives things brains will do when this communication loop is closing and is running well, closed instead of open and interrupted. When that loop is running well, you'll see your brain do specific things and your body do specific things. They're going through their process of resolving symptoms and regulating and those sorts of things. So you can measure that so you're not just hoping and wondering. But the tapping interventions are for this, right? A client asked me today, so what's this tapping doing, right? Because they're like, is Rachel doing magic over here? I get asked that. I wish I was. Let me tell you that right now. That would be super awesome. I would love that. However, I'm actually doing brain science, and we're just influencing this part of the brain, which is much different than what we do in talk therapy. In talk therapy, we're actually working directly with this part of the brain. I don't do that because this part of the brain is only sending 20% of the communication down, and just because they talk to the body doesn't mean the body can talk to it, and it doesn't mean that the body can go through its process of coming into alignment with what this part of your brain wants to do. So if you want to stop emotional eating, excuse me, if you want to stop emotional eating, you can talk about it and think about it all you want to. But if your body is distressed and it uses food to cope, whenever you get here in this state, this part of the brain will take you to go eat so that you can do this. And you don't get a choice. That's just how it works. And so, excuse me. I'm at the end of a cold again. So, but so we're really working on influencing this part. Okay. And tapping will do this. So what's going on with tapping is we are just talking to this part of the brain. Talk therapy is up here because this is the word center, the reasoning, the logic. If you do a bunch of talk therapy, you will really understand your symptoms a lot, but we don't know if you'll be able to influence the body or your subconscious programming to bring them in alignment with your goals. Like, let's say again, your goal is to stop emotionally eating, right? When your body goes through its process of coming in alignment with not using food to cope, and your subconscious programming does, that whole process ends. And this is your body's process for completing, changing, breaking habits, doing new things. Like, you need this nervous system regulation so much that if you need to get it through emotional eating, you're going to, because it works. Your brain likes that. We would need to build in new ways of doing this. And we'd need to build in less of this anyway, right? So we need your environment not to trigger you so much. And we need you to have multiple ways of helping your system regulate, because regulation is so important that your body will go to food to get that regulation. regardless. So this working with this part of the brain frees us up from fighting with our habits and our behaviors and our subconscious programming and our body, and it allows our body, and we're supporting our body to finally complete this loop, and everything changes. All the symptoms resolve. All of the behaviors that were set to manage the symptoms, the fight, flight, freeze, or faint, the irritability, the snapping at people, the fawning, the people pleasing, all that stuff stops because this part of the brain knows how to do other things. And now that this part of the brain is here, now we're just doing better. We're living better. We're solving problems better. And we want this. This is how we want to live most of our life. Except for if we are being chased by lions or we are really in a survival state, we're going to go here. This is what we're supposed to be doing. There's no problem with that. It's when we're doing flipping our lid like this in situations where we're not actually in danger. Our brain is really confused and it says it's making the wrong judgments. And so we could tell it, it's, hey, survival system, this is the wrong thing to do. Hey, survival system, this is ridiculous. Hey, survival system, we could tell it, but we're not talking to it directly in its own native language. And when we start using strategies that do, all of a sudden it listens. Right? And we want to support that part of the brain when we have symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress. Okay? So this is really the hack. Working with your survival system is the hack. That's it. That's where the gold is. If this part of your brain is calm and is relaxed and is getting enough support, it will allow this other part to function well. And it's the overrider. It gets to go first. It's right like the brainstem, all this information is coming up the brainstem to this, right? It gets the information first. The guys at the top might be like, oh, look at this good information that's coming up. Oh, it's gone. This isn't a choice center. It doesn't give you choices. It's an automatic response that we have. So we can really account for it while we're doing work, while we're processing traumas, while we're working, while we're in a panic attack. We can actually influence that part of the brain to start calming. All of a sudden, what was causing a panic attack finally gets up here, and they're like, "Oh, now we understand. We get it. Oh, let's write some codes and that are inclusive of what's happening." And now we're not panicking anymore. And now you can drive your car without panic attacks. You can cross bridges without panic attacks. You can see spiders without panic attacks. All because the body had all this information about spiders that probably was not accurate. But that's not the body's job. The body's job is let me tell you all about it. And the top part of the brain's job is let me hear all about it, right? And then we'll sort it out and we'll figure out what's going on. It's like this is like the toddler that's afraid of the dark, right? And you could tell the toddler stop being afraid of the dark. That's not going to stop the fear. But if you can see it from their perspective and you can find some solutions, because that's what this part of the brain's entire job is, all of a sudden they're feeding the solution back to the body, and the body's like, oh, okay, I'm not afraid. And actually, that spider is kind of cool. Look at all that hair on its legs. If you have a spider phobia like I did, you probably aren't liking this conversation. Anyway, but that's really it. We really want to work with this part of the brain. Now, let me show you something. This part of the brain is, we have it at birth, right? We come out of the womb, we arrive in the world, we feel this oxygen, and all of a sudden we flip our lid and we're crying, right? And people do is they come up beside us and we pick us up and they start rocking us, and that rocking motion is talking to this part of the brain. You can rock people through things, even adults, because this part of the brain does not change. Okay, it doesn't evolve, it doesn't mature, it doesn't stop wanting to be rocked. Right? It's just now there's other parts of us that are like, look, don't rock me. Right? And so, but you could. And so you're rocking this baby, and all of a sudden their brain is whole brain state. They've unflipped their lid, and now this part of the brain is learning about the oxygen and these new sensations in the body, and it's learning that it's safe, and oh, okay, actually we're all right, and the baby will calm, and they're now learning about life, and they're integrating it, they're sleeping, they're resting, they're going through their growth processes. Okay, if we didn't get that as children, well, if we did get it in baby phase, it's because if somebody wasn't working with their body like that, we would die, because nobody can stay in a limbic state without coming out, and infants need that support. So, but let's say in early childhood, you fall down, you bump your leg, you're crying, and you're here in this limbic state, and mom comes and picks you up, and she pats you and says, shh. that sound is coming in through the ears. We're using the body with the sound. We're rocking again. We're patting. We're getting a pat on the back. That's all talking to this part of the brain. Calm eventually occurs, and then this child, the body sends up all the information, and the child's getting better walking, running, playing on the playground, hanging out with friends, getting along with friends, because this part of the brain is working. This part of the brain is designed to do wonderful, powerful work, building our social skills, building our physical skills, building everything we want done up here, right? But it needs its partner to understand and make sense of the world around it. So it's not just building for air or for some delusion or for some distortion of reality, which will happen if it's not getting the information from the body, right? And right, the body keeps the score is talking about trauma and how this stuff goes up the brainstem, gets kicked back out and stays up in here. And now this body is full of stuff that needs to be processed that should have been processed. This is how our disorders grow, by not making it through this loop, right? We need this loop happening. This is the controller of the loop. This is the one we're talking to in trauma work. That your trauma professionals are that are doing the best work are really focused on this part of your brain. Okay, and so that's why it's a lot different than talk therapy, because people in sessions with me sit and tap on their points while we work on memories or emotions or beliefs or habits or problematic ways of being, dysfunctions of all kinds. We want their brain to pull in here and solve this problem for us in alignment with their values, the client's values, morals, not mine. I don't know what you should do. It's not my life. My brain is designed to make solutions for me. Your brain's designed to make solutions for you. Let's go, your brain. Let's go. You need to figure this out. Process all this data. You got a narcissistic mother you have to figure out how to make peace with, or just survive through. You better get your brain working on that. Because this body, mind, body loop contains all the information, the reality of the situation, and their job is to understand it, sort it, process it pretty soon, and they will if they can get the information. If your mom's stuff is doing this and you're flipping your lid around your mom, this part of the brain cannot help you. And so then it's going back down. You survive the event, but then you got to you calm down. Then you come back. Mom does it again, and you're here. And then you leave, and you calm down, and then you're just in this loop with your narcissistic mother, right? And nothing's changing. You want this part of your brain on the case, and it won't as long as this part is running the show, because that's how it works. You actually need to survive your narcissistic mother. So this part of the brain's all involved. I get it, but let's talk to this part of the brain, calm down, so it will bring back on the other players. And now all of a sudden you're sifting, sorting through the information, you're processing memories, the things that used to upset you, your brain's working on. Now it's not upsetting you anymore. You're able to stay regulated with her. And now that you're regulated, you're starting to see other things, other patterns. You're starting to see what's going on, and you start to behave differently. This happens 100% of the time with my clients. They come back to me, they say, oh, this is what I did that was different, and it worked. And they stop wasting their time trying to change mom, because they understand the brain function involved with narcissism, because I'm teaching this. And they start to be more effective and waste less energy with mom, because they're not fighting reality, which is what's going on in the body can't deliver the information, and they're actually being accurate with mom, right? All of the problems are here. Your procrastination is happening because this part of the brain thinks you're going to die with that task. You can sit there and say, hey, it's going to be easy. Why are you freaking out? This isn't such a big deal. Stop being lazy. You could do all of that. You're wasting time. If you come in here and you talk to this part of the brain, it will calm. Maybe you're tapping. I'm going to show you some other interventions here in a second. Whatever, but all of a sudden it calms, and now you're actually saying, it's not that difficult, or it is a big deal. Why don't we break it down into 6 parts? I mean, you will watch yourself get very logical and reasonable and strategic with your obstacles, because those parts of the brain are at work. If you are doing something and you are entirely emotional and illogical, that's because these parts of the brain are not on your team yet. And this part of the brain has kicked them off and said, we need to survive, fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn. That's why you're falling asleep. You're avoiding, you're doing other tasks, you're going and you're running around in your savior complex, survival state. The savior complex is a survival state. And so here, this one is the key to all of this transformation. You want to grow in your business. This part of the brain is it, all part is the key to that transformation. You want to learn a sport and advance in your sport. This part of the brain, right? Frustration starts running up because you've missed the tennis ball 5 times in a swing, or you keep hitting the net, and frustration, you're flipping your lid. Now you want to hit your racket around all the floor and all around the whatever, and you're here, but you start working with this part of the brain. Maybe you're tapping, because that's the intervention I've introduced so far. And all of a sudden, you were talking to that part of the brain, or maybe you just want to sit and rock yourself instead of throw your racket around. I don't know, right? We were talking about that. So anyway, but you're regulating, and now your whole brain's looking at this, reading the frustration. Frustration is the report of what's not working. The top of the brain needs to know that so that they can figure out new ways of doing things, solutions. Well, let's try another thing. Oh yeah, we tried that. It definitely didn't work. One thing I told a client today that is a victim of domestic violence. She's having a hard time separating, and and so and we talked about this loop, right? She's a little bit mad at herself, like we can be in anything in our life, because she doesn't want to leave, right? And she's like, I know that this is a problem and I don't want to leave. And so there's conflict in there. And what has happened is there's some of the traumas have from her body. Her body remembers being hit, right? Her body remembers the intimidation. Her body knows all that stuff, but it can't get the information to the top of the brain. So this part of the brain is acting like they don't know that there's violence here. And they don't, because they have not received the information, because this part is blocking. So what we do is we're just working with this part of the brain, because all of those memories, all of that information has to come up to this part of the brain. Then they will finally receive the information. And then they will be like, oh crap, that was bad. Ooh. So, and then all of a sudden they're giving words to their experience. Now, all of a sudden they're looking at their values and their morals. They're looking for strategies. They're looking for solutions. In the beginning of this, it's not going to be very good solutions, because there's a bunch of stuff in the body still needing to process. And so that stuff is going to be coming up. We're going to be supporting that loop so that her thoughts and her reasoning, and it looks like it's accurate to reality. How many of us are with friends, or, that have partners that are like, I've been here. I'm still working through this one on some levels, where you just want to believe the best in people. And you're like, hello, right? When you grow up with narcissistic families and cycles of abuse, this is very, very common. And that's because the system, all the memories are stuck in the body and they haven't made it to the top. Right? And we just need to support that. And it will happen in beautiful time, right? The more we need it, the more we're aware of it. We're like, oh, there it is again. We just work it through, and up it goes. And then we see transformation happen, clarity. And then there's words for stuff. I came up with words for something today I was just in the shower, and it was relaxing, right? There's water happening. I'm brushing my hair. I've got my eyes closed. I'm breathing deeply and relaxed. And my brain just says boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden I've got words for something. I'm like, oh, that was right there the whole time. Right? But I'm in a regulated state. This mind-body circuit's moving, and now I have words for something. And I was able to easily communicate them. It was wonderful. I was like, good job, brain. I didn't even know I was looking for that. But when the loop is moving, we're getting it. Everybody's looking out for us. This part of my client does not want to be hit anymore, and this part doesn't want that either, but they're not connecting. Right? We need that connection happening. And this is what we're doing. Right? And there's so much of this. Denial is about this. I could go off. But okay, so let's talk about interventions. So anything that soothes a baby can get you through a symptom. We're working with this part of the brain. Right? Now, Crying, rocking, patting, getting hugs isn't always available to us. So that's why I have these four. Some of them are easy, as holding the forehead, working with the brain in different ways, just touch. Um, EMDR is back and forth, or you're moving your eyes back and forth, right? We're using the body to get healing to happen. We're talking to this part of the brain. We're meeting the needs of this part of the brain. Their breathing interventions are wonderful. This breathe as slow on the exhale. That's the jam. I have my favorite trauma processing intervention is a breathing intervention. There's so many ways to do this, but it has to be done with consideration of how brains work and the survival system part of the brain. This part of the brain's happy and getting support, lots and lots and lots of support, and your world is healing. A lot of the reasons why people with complex PTSD have so many symptoms because they just they didn't get enough support to this part of the brain. They didn't get the hugs, the touches, the comforting sounds, the soothings. That is actually specific brain work, and it's working with the survival system part of the brain. It's important. So I want to invite you to take a journey with me and learn. Let me teach you three of my favorite interventions for this work, and I offer them for free in my program, Interventions for Inner World Transformation. And you can jump on, you can try these interventions out. I take about 15 minutes to teach each one. I keep the videos very simple, and try to give you the least amount of information, but the most information you need to just trial it, because the most important piece is you doing the intervention and seeing how your body responds, how your mind responds. And so I give you three so that you can try them all out and see which one gets you the best results. Or in most of my clients' perspective, they'll walk away with two or all three of the interventions work really well for them. And they're really making massive inroads on how they're regulating their nervous system. They're closing their lid is unflipping, and they're processing information. We want to do this a lot. Once we have a working intervention, we want to do this a lot, because when people are beginning their transformation out of anxiety into health and wellness, or out of PTSD and depression into health and wellness or abuse, there's a lot of this going on all day long, and people don't register that because they're used to it. But when I'm looking at them, I'm like, okay, we've got the brain, they're like this. Sometimes they're just like survival state, right? And so we want to apply a lot of intervention use in the beginning. And so try it out, play around. If you find a matching intervention, I have a program that will help you get a ton of support to this part of the brain and help you be able to resolve your symptoms in a very specific, orderly, organized way that makes sense to your brain, because your brain customizes the journey. And that program, Inner World Transformation, is available on my website. I've added links to it. You can learn about that. And if that's a journey you want to take with me, awesome. It's a wonderful way to spend 2 months of your time. I deliver one brain exercise each week, and your brain just goes off. It's wonderful. I love it. It's layer after layer after layer. And I love it because it's really empowering for you to be able to start a project and see your brain take off with it once your brain is getting the support. And then your brain is resolving symptoms for you instead of you fighting with your brain to resolve symptoms. So, and if this is something you'd like me to walk you through personally, I have programs available for that as well, coaching programs, and you can see those on my website and learn more about those. So I hope you learned a ton. I would love to hear about that in your comments, or if this brought up questions for you, leave those. I will answer them. I am watching, and wonderful connecting. Take care. Bye.